if you or someone you know has recently been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis or has had it for a long time, or could even be another autoimmune condition or another chronic condition, then I think it's going to apply to all of you. Please tune in to this episode. It really could be life-changing. I'm Jane Hogan, the Wellness Engineer, and this show is Wellness by Design. I'm your host, and I've got my own story with rheumatoid arthritis, and it's kind of why I left my whole engineering career behind and became the Wellness Engineer, so that I could help people with rheumatoid arthritis and share what I've learned, because I learned so much and I didn't want to just let it all go to waste. So it's why I do what I do. So enjoy this episode. If you haven't already subscribed to Wellness by Design, then please do so. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe to Jane Hogan Health, the Wellness Engineer on YouTube, or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast apps. And please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. All right, let's dive in. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my background and how rheumatoid arthritis came into my life. I didn't even really know much about rheumatoid arthritis, except I remember hearing my mother say she had osteoarthritis and her saying, well, thank goodness it's not rheumatoid. That was all I ever heard about rheumatoid arthritis before. And it came along very suddenly for me. So 2016, I had just turned 50, but I had had a very stressful year. My mother, who I was very close to, had died suddenly, and I was left with dealing with the grief. First of all, this huge loss in my life, the suddenness of it, and also all of her house and the contents. And my parents have been collectors, and they've been in the house for 50 years, and I had 3 siblings. So you can imagine there was a lot going on. And also my mother lived a 7-hour drive away from me, so it wasn't even close. So there was a lot going on. And so about a year after my mother died, and I'd been going through all of this, I started getting this really severe joint pain. I mean, I'd had pain before in my, tight shoulders. I had rotator cuff problems and, going to the chiropractor for different things. But this was different because it was very severe. Like it right away, my shoulder hurt and it had to go in a sling. My arm had to go in a sling. Like I couldn't move it. And then the next day, weirdly, it was the other shoulder. And this kind of continued on for several weeks, moving around shoulders, elbows, wrists, hands, knees, feet, toes, jaw. It was just, I felt like someone had a voodoo doll and they were like sticking pins in me. And I really didn't know what it was, but I was kind of sure that it was related to the stress because I knew I was stressed and not sleeping. And so I thought I just need to have a vacation, get all of this dealt with, take a vacation, then I'll be fine. So I did that. And I sold my mother's house, dealt with all the contents, divided everything up really fairly because that's the way I was, right? Hyper vigilant about that. It's one of those behavioral adaptations I know goes with RA now. And I took a vacation and I got worse. And there's nothing showing up in my blood work or anything. And anyway, my doctor, who was really fabulous and a real natural kind of doctor, forever grateful to her, she suggested that sometimes foods could cause joint pain. And I had never heard of this before. And it didn't even seem to make sense to me that what you eat could affect your joints. I mean, this was 2016. I was healthy and strong. I wasn't researching any of this stuff. So she told me gluten and dairy were common triggers. So I cut them out. I had no idea what I was doing. And I wasn't really following any sensible plan. Instead of eating gluten, I started just eating tons of fruit. And that caused other problems. But anyway, but I knew when I cut out gluten that I did feel better. I had less pain. And so it did take me down the natural route, which was great. And then it led me to functional medicine and so on. I still had a bit of a circuitous route because there's still other things I didn't find out right from the beginning, and I'll tell you about those as we go through. And eventually I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I did go see a rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist was very supportive of what I was doing, but still had nothing to offer me but medications. And I kept seeing the rheumatologist every few months, and I go in and say, well, I'm feeling a bit better, but, I still had some inflammation. And so he would say, well, you better do something about this because you're going to have permanent damage. And so would just keep offering me the drugs. And I was just like, well, I don't really want to take the drugs because I didn't like the side effects. And I'm not saying this is for everybody. It was just the route that I wanted to go. And I was willing to experiment on myself. And that's exactly what I did. I was just really a living experiment. And eventually, it took a while. I started to realize some of the other things I'm going to talk about today, the things I wish I had known when I was first diagnosed. And even a couple of years into my journey where I was really focused still on physical, natural things, but they were still very physical and not really understanding the role of our brain and our nervous system. So I will get to that. Trust me. Just wait and you'll hear all about it. So eventually I did reverse the rheumatoid arthritis. I still may sometimes have some pain when I get stressed, but now I know what it is, and it doesn't scare me anymore. Because, if you've found me, then you probably were searching rheumatoid arthritis, and there's a lot of scary information out there about rheumatoid arthritis. When you read it, it's very frightening, and that actually aggravates the RA, the symptoms, even more because of the relationship of our brain and nervous system to our body. So let me, that's kind of my history. So I ended up leaving my engineering career because, I was kind of given like a little bit of higher guidance that I was going to figure out how to fix myself. Now I know there was really nothing wrong with me, but how to stop this from expressing itself in my body, and that I would help other people to do that as well. And so I realized I wasn't fulfilled in my engineering career anymore. How could I spend my time and energy teaching those things, which used to be fulfilling for me, when I really knew I had to teach something else? And so that's what I do now. That's why I've got this podcast. That's why I am the wellness engineer. That's why I create the programs and courses that I have. And it's all really for you. So if you have RA, or if you've got some other chronic condition or chronic pain, this is for you. It's why you're the reason I'm doing this. So thank you for being here and listening and giving me the opportunity to fulfill my mission. So thank you, my friend. All right, let me talk about the 5 things. It's hard to narrow it down, but I thought I'm just going to stick with 5 things I wish I had known when I was first diagnosed with RA. So the first one is that rheumatoid arthritis is curable. So if you start doing the research, as I mentioned earlier, you know that one of the first things you read is that there's no known cure. And there are drugs and medications that can provide some relief, but from what I had read, for a lot of people, most of them only work temporarily. And then they have to have stronger or different drugs. And of course, all drugs come with side effects. And for me personally, I just didn't want to have those side effects if I could find another way. And I'm lucky, I guess, in that my father, he didn't have rheumatoid arthritis, but he had heart trouble and diabetes and so on. And he used to, once a year, maybe sometimes twice a year, he would go to this place in, first he used to go to England, and then he would go to this place in the US. And I think basically they just put him on a really strict diet and then got him out walking. They have doctors there, and he would go off his beta blockers, and he would go off his insulin when he was at this for a month, and he would lose lots of weight and he'd come back feeling great, but then he'd get into his lifestyle again, his regular lifestyle, which was very stressful, and he was a very stressful kind of person. And then it would all kind of go back. But I knew that, well, for that period of time, there was something he could do. So I had in my head, I guess, that there was something I could do. So I'm blessed, right? I didn't, even though he did take medications, I was kind of lucky that I had seen that there can be another way to do this if you live differently. He used to only do it for, a month or two a year, but you really have to live this way all the time. So it is curable. Now, as I started doing a bit more research, and I did find people who had reversed rheumatoid arthritis, and so that was good. And maybe that's how you have found me as well, because I've reversed rheumatoid arthritis. So that's good. There's more. Thank goodness for the internet, right? That we can find these stories easily, and we're not dependent on, what our medical professional person might be telling us, that there is no cure. Because that's what I was told. And if there was no internet, that would have been my only lifeline to how to deal with this. But, luckily I found other ways. And that is one of the beautiful things. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of bad information out there. So that's kind of the problem, in that now we've got no shortage of information, but how do we comb through it and find the right stuff? And that's kind of what I do. I feel like I'm a curator for you, because I still read all the books. I still do the research. I'm always reading research papers and studies on pain and rheumatoid arthritis and the nervous system and natural healing and all this kind of stuff. I'm reading the studies. I kind of like that stuff, but and I'm also interviewing people, right? On my podcast, I'm interviewing and I host events. I'm interviewing people who are experts in this. So I'm constantly, filtering the information and curating the information for you so that you don't have to keep looking everywhere. So that's my mission. That's what I like to do. And that's what I'm doing for you. So coming back, so our number one point is that rheumatoid arthritis is curable. Number 2 is that genes don't cause rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I did not have, as far as I know, rheumatoid arthritis or autoimmune disease in my family. No one close to me had been diagnosed. So, we hear a lot of times that autoimmune conditions run in families. And so people think, well, I'll get it, or I can't fix this because my mother had it, my sister had it, my father, whatever. What I've learned is that genes do not dictate your health. They give you maybe a propensity, like a leaning towards something, but there's no one gene that causes rheumatoid arthritis. It's many, many, many genes that can dim or like up or down, and many have to happen. So it's not like just one thing, one gene, or several genes that mean you will inevitably get rheumatoid arthritis or any disease for that matter. There's maybe like just a few, like under 10 as far as I know, that are caused by genes. Every other health condition, even things like diabetes, even high blood pressure, even heart conditions or cancers and things like that. It's not one gene. And so many people are stuck in this story. I hear it kind of over and over again, even amongst educated people. And it's not surprising because that's been the narrative for so long. And people are hearing this again from their medical professionals, which is no fault of their own. It's just that the curriculums take years. I taught in a college system, and I know that it takes years and years for curriculum to change. For me personally, I wasn't willing to wait for that. I didn't want to wait 15 years or more for someone to say that rheumatoid arthritis, there are lifestyle things you can do or whatever the things I'm going to talk about today. There's other things that you can do. I wasn't willing to wait. I was willing to experiment on myself because I'd seen enough and read enough to believe that it was true. So your genes do not dictate your health. The environment does. So how do we know this? Well, all the new research in the field of epigenetics, epi means above the gene. So what they've found in epigenetics is that the cell, just think, we're made up of trillions of cells, right? Maybe even more. So each cell has receptors on the surface of the cell that pick up on what's going on around the cell. And from that, the cell will respond. So is it responding to danger, right? Or is it responding to things are all going well? And it's that, not the DNA, that dictates how that cell responds. So the environment, we're talking about the environment of the little cells. Cells make up organs in our body. The organs make up systems in our body. And so constantly our cells are picking up on this environment that they're in. That could be, the physical environment, the chemical environment, the air around us, the thoughts that we think, because our thoughts create chemistry in the body. And those chemistry signaling is what the cells are picking up on. And then we could go down the whole field of energy, right? That everything is energy. And so the cells are energy and they're picking up on the energy. So that's a whole nother thing. But just coming back to, it's the cells responding to the environment, not responding to the genes. Okay. Third point that I wish I had known was that anti-inflammatory diets are not the complete answer, or supplements, or all these testing that a lot of really well-intentioned naturopaths are pushing. So things like food sensitivity tests, or metal toxicity tests, or stool tests and all that. I mean, it's not to say that these things are wrong. They aren't wrong, but the way I like to describe it is these things can help because they are dealing with the secondary symptoms which you're feeling. What are our secondary symptoms, I guess, not true root causes. They're told that they're true root causes, but they're not really. So it's things like, infections and gut infections and leaky gut, and the fact that we're got food sensitivities, or the fact that we, can't tolerate different foods or chemicals or things anymore. Those are like the smoke, not the fire, right? The smoke, not the fire. So imagine firefighters just going, okay, we got to get the smoke out of here. Everything's going to be fine, and not dealing with the fire. It wouldn't work. And the same way, these are okay. They can help, we'll be able to see better, but it's not going to change the fact that more smoke will come in, right? So we want to deal with the true root cause, the fire that's really there. So I wish I'd known this, because I spent about 2 years eating anti-inflammatory diets and actually starting to develop a fear of food. And I was working, I found out that I had a bacterial overgrowth, and I thought, okay, I got to cure that. That'll be fine. And so I worked for nearly a year clearing up a bacterial infection in my gut. It helped. Sure, it helped, but it didn't get me all the way. So I'm not saying don't do those things. I think do them with the understanding that they are the smoke, not the fire. So I was doing all of this stuff with the smoke, and it did help, but I still was having a lot of flares. I still had, I developed terrible Achilles tendon. It just kind of shifted, the pain shifted to somewhere else. So that's the other thing. So understanding that inflammatory diets are not, and all these other natural approaches are dealing with the smoke, not the fire. And so then let's talk about the next things. What I wish I knew, that emotions and childhood trauma are connected to rheumatoid arthritis. This is well documented now. The Adverse Childhood Events Score, if you search that, just search ACE score, you'll see that childhood trauma is linked to health problems as adults, autoimmune conditions especially. And it doesn't have to be big trauma. When you look up the ACE scores, the original test focused mostly on, the big traumas, things like neglect and abuse, the big ones that we would think of when we think of trauma. And I didn't have any of those. But even mild trauma can result in problems later on in life. And that's what I had. I just had mild trauma. But even mild trauma, it's not actually the event that is the trauma. It's our reaction to the trauma. So there's a lot of things that can modulate that, right? Someone who has, one of the severe traumas may have some really supportive family around them. And so even though they had a big trauma, it may not be as impactful as someone who has a mild trauma and has no sense of people around them that care for them, or they don't feel cared for in some way, or they created a meaning, because when we're children, we don't have, our cognitive thinking hasn't developed. So we just kind of assume things are our fault, or we assume that we aren't safe. And so these programs get ingrained in our subconscious mind, and then they're running things. So you have it's like having a smoldering fire, right? It's like having that smoldering fire going all the time, and our cells are bathed in that. And then you may, throw in a big trauma or something very traumatic, like for me, my mother dying, right? Throw that in on top of the smoldering fire that I had going my whole life, not feeling good enough. And it's just, came from a sibling that teased me. That's all, right? It's minor. You would think minor. But I kind of went through my whole life thinking I wasn't as good, and I wasn't good enough, and I wasn't smart, and all those things. And kind of spent my life trying to prove that I was. But in my case, so I had this smoldering fire, and then this trauma of my mother dying suddenly and all the other stuff was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And so I didn't know at the time. I mean, I had an inkling at the time that it was related to, my mother dying. I knew that there was that stressful event, but it took me a while to figure out, my childhood, because I would have said that I had a pretty good childhood, didn't seem that traumatic. But I didn't realize at the time that when you're little and something happens that maybe might not seem like that much, but if you don't feel safe, then you do get this smoldering fire going on. And there's, it shows up as physical, in a physical way, right, with disease. For me, it showed up as rheumatoid arthritis. For someone else, it might show up as heart trouble. For someone else, it might show up as psoriasis. It doesn't matter, really. Most chronic conditions, it comes back to this. But there are behavioral adaptations that give you an indication. So some of the common ones I talk about are things like people-pleasing and perfectionism and the hypervigilance I mentioned earlier, hyper-independence, not setting boundaries, like you're not able to say no, fawning, so like trying to that's people-pleasing, right? So that's one of it's kind of, you're hearing it more now, I think, in social media and so on, that, we used to hear fight, flight, freeze, and the other one now is fawn. And that comes out as these behavioral adaptations, fawning, or helping people all the time. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but if the reason we're doing it is because we don't feel safe, then we kind of know it's because we don't feel safe. And so if we don't feel safe, unless we do these things, then it's a smoldering fire. And you may not even be aware of it. Like, I really wasn't aware myself, but then I kind of knew. Yeah, I was kind of a perfectionist, and I was really sensitive to criticism. So those are just signs. You don't feel safe. You don't feel like I'm okay no matter what. I'm okay with people and what they say no matter what. If we're not, then that's an indicator that we've got this smoldering fire. Now, the fifth thing that I wish I'd known when I was first diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis kind of is related to the fourth thing. And that is that the true root cause of rheumatoid arthritis, numerous other conditions, is nervous system dysregulation. Nervous system dysregulation. What does that mean? Stuck in fear mode. Why are we stuck in fear mode? Because of our life's experiences, because we got programs put in our brain when we were really, really young, and our subconscious mind works really well at creating habits of thinking, habits of doing. That's what it does. And it's the subconscious mind that runs the physical body. So if the subconscious mind is getting the message that things aren't safe and it's stuck in that mode because it's been repeated for so long, like 50 years or more, then it's stuck in this fear mode. And in fear mode, so this is what I'm talking about, is those two modes of the nervous system, where it can either be in the parasympathetic state, which is the relaxation state, the everything is fine and everything runs normally state, versus the sympathetic state, which is the stress response, which is, oh my gosh, as far as the brain is concerned, I'm in mortal danger. I might die if people don't like me. I might die if I don't do these things because people may not like me. Or I might die if, we're not consciously thinking that, right? But our subconscious mind, that's what it interprets fear as. And so in that state, of course, digestion doesn't work as well. So yes, you may get acid reflux. You may get not enough acid. You may get bacterial overgrowth. You may get food sensitivities. You may get leaky gut. Those are the smoke, not the fire. Of course, if your brain is getting the message that things aren't safe, the immune system is not going to work so well because it's not concerned with fighting off, infections and so on. It's concerned with life or death right now. And so the immune, you could get bacteria growing. You could get old viruses start acting up again. You could get, an inability to fight off bacteria that's normally present in the mouth and so on. I was told at one point that they suspected rheumatoid arthritis was linked to a bacteria in the mouth. Well, maybe it might be linked to it, but again, smoke, not root cause. The smoke is, this bacteria, we're not fighting it off well. And so, yes, it can cause secondary things. So again, these are the smoke, not the fire. And then the other thing that's really impacted by the nervous system dysregulation is the endocrine system. So hormones not working well. So I mentioned the immune system already could get confused and so on, but the hormones also not working so well. So perhaps we're not, regulating cortisol, and we're not creating serotonin and melatonin and so on. So then we're not sleeping well. And so all these things compound. I hope this is making sense for you, that the true root cause, the fire underneath, really is the nervous system not being regulated properly, stuck in that fear mode. And so then we get all these secondary things happening. All right, so now I've told you about the 5 things. Then, just to summarize them, said the 5 things I wish I had known when I was first diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis was that rheumatoid arthritis is curable, that genes don't cause rheumatoid arthritis. They may give you a propensity, but it doesn't mean it's inevitable, okay? Super important. And that anti-inflammatory diets and all these other natural approaches that we commonly hear about they're okay, but they're dealing with the smoke, not the fire. And that emotions and childhood trauma are linked to rheumatoid arthritis and a host of other chronic health conditions. And number 5 is that the true root cause of rheumatoid arthritis, in my opinion, and from everything that I read and people that I talked to, is nervous system dysregulation. And this doesn't apply to just rheumatoid arthritis. It applies to nearly all chronic pain, most chronic health conditions, and most chronic diseases. It's really so simple. It really is so simple. So now that we know that it's nervous system dysregulation, what can you do? What can you do about this? Because the thing is, the only person that can regulate your nervous system is you. But there's power in this, right? There's power in this because you have the power to do it. Might seem like we're so used to the idea of like, go see someone, take a pill, fix me, right? But we know that those aren't the answer. Temporary, don't work long, or even like surgeries or injections and all those kinds of things. They're not the answer. Or see with people with rheumatoid arthritis, like, wearing like compression stuff and splints and, all of these things, or braces. Bleh. Those aren't solutions, right? So, so understanding that the nervous system and regulation of the nervous system is really the answer. You're the one that can do it. I think that makes you very powerful, and it puts you in the position. I love using this terminology that you can be your own hero. You are your own hero. The one that's going to help you is you. You can have a team around you, of course, but to get at that fire, you are the one that has to do that. So where would you go from here? I'd be very careful about what support groups you join. So initially, I was like, we do the thing on Facebook. What are the support groups are there? And I joined all these rheumatoid arthritis support groups, including natural ones. And for the most part, people were talking a lot about medications and side effects and how horrible their life is. And I feel like I really do feel compassion, but I didn't want to be in that, because here's the problem. Remember, nervous system regulation. When you start reading all those kinds of things and people posting pictures of, misshapen joints and all that, it gets you in fear mode. And that reinforces the dysregulation of the nervous system. It will keep you there. So be very careful about the groups that you join. Watch how you feel. That's probably the best thing. Notice how you feel when you read the posts in the group. Are they uplifting? Are they giving you hope? If not, don't stay in those groups. So also follow me. I am one that's giving you a different message. I'm giving you hope. So follow me. If you haven't already subscribed to this show, then do that. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to a podcast, please subscribe. Leave a comment. Let me know. It just helps more people find this, but also it'll show up for you more than too. And so my goal is to always help you have hope and feel good and believe in yourself and believe that you can heal, because you can. If you want to be part of my community, I send out an email every Friday called the Friday Thrive to my inner circle community. So if you want to join that, go to thewellnessengineer.com/subscribe, or you can just go to thewellnessengineer.com. Right on my homepage, I've got a free gift for you that it's a calming gift. So it's kind of that first step of creating calm. So download that, and that will help you. Now, if you want to go a step further, you can also go to my website and look at the programs that I offer. I offer a range of different prices, starting really inexpensive, and then some couple of times a year, I do some group coaching. I've also got a membership called Living Pain Free, which, it's month to month. So if you want to be in a community like that, you can. It's a paid membership. And I've also got for people specifically with rheumatoid arthritis, I do have a course called the Reverse Rheumatoid Arthritis Blueprint. It's a DIY course. You know, it's giving you hope, and it's got some initial resources for you. So it's really helpful. And if you want to save 50% on that, I've got a link. So check out the link that's in the description. Or if you're going to my website and you find the course there, so go under programs and you'll see the course is there. Reverse Rheumatoid Arthritis is there. Click on that and use the code SAVE50, so uppercase SAVE 50 at checkout to get it for 50% off. All right, my friends, I hope you found this super helpful. I've kind of talked a lot today, but I just really wanted to get this across for you to give you hope and hopefully steer you in a different direction if you are going down a more hopeless kind of direction. So I hope you are now going in the right direction. So what's the one thing you can do today that's going to initiate healing? Calm the nervous system. Calm the nervous system. Pay attention to your breath. Just notice your breath in the moment and just say, I'm breathing, I'm fine. As long as you're breathing, you are alive. Just feel good about that. And if you want to listen to some more things, and go to my website or check out my YouTube channel, and I got lots of other resources there. But that's a great place for you to start. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful. And also, just stay tuned for future episodes. I've got so many great, exciting guests coming up. I'm always trying to provide you with content that is going to help you have hope, help you find relief, and eventually pain-free living. So chronic pain, rheumatoid arthritis, none of this have to be your final story. It doesn't have to be something you learn to live with, right? So you can become pain-free, and I want that for you, my friend. Okay, so don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share, leave a comment. And just, if you know someone who needs to hear this, let them know about this. Share this with them. You could be changing their life. Okay, I'll see you in the next episode of Wellness by Design.